Got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, an assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight it is stories for children, and who better than Sarah Lloyd Winder? Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Now, it's silent. Listen. The bells will start soon. There is nothing I can do. The church is diagonally over there. They do pulling practice on a Friday. We will hear the English countryside sound of the bells at some point. So there you go. Now, tonight, I'm telling stories of butterflies and smugglers that don't go together at all, do they? But I did bring my butterflies, and these are absolutely beautiful butterflies. Except there's one terrible thing. You see, in the past, when people collected beautiful butterflies after they died, they pinned them. So they've all got sticky pins in them. But they are very beautiful, aren't they? So you know what butterflies look like. Because when they flit past you, you don't quite know. So this is my first story. There was a beautiful river. It was the Murray River. And the people and the animals were the same thing, you see. In that time, sometimes they seemed to be animals and sometimes they seemed to be people. But they were all there, sitting beside the beautiful river, having a great time in the summer. So the elder people, they sat on their chairs and they discussed the future of the world, how things should be done, what should happen. And the young people, they played in the river. They climbed the trees, they jumped in the mud, and they all had a good time. And in the evening, they would gather around the bonfire and they would have stories and share stories. And it was lovely. This went on for days and days. But then one day, something odd happened. They were all sitting there having a chat when Cockatoo fell out the tree. Round he went, round, 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 bang on the ground. What's happened to Cockatoo, they said. He's on the ground. Well, somebody went up and offered him some food because they knew Cockatoo always liked some food. He didn't move. Then somebody went up and they opened his eye. But Cockatoo didn't look at them and he definitely didn't move. Somebody else went up with a spear and they poked him. Still Cockatoo didn't move. So they called the medicine man. And the medicine man came and looked at him and said, I don't know. Looks like he's gone somewhere. Perhaps he's asleep. So they waited for him to wake up. They waited a whole day. But Cockatoo didn't wake up. So they called the eagle. Eagle, what's happened to Cockatoo? That's when the bells came. The eagle said, I think he's gone. Like a stone. When you throw a stone into the river, it disappears. And that's what's happened to Cockatoo. He's gone somewhere like the stone. They all looked round. He's still there, they said. Ah, that is a difficulty. So then Crow came up. Now, Crow was a bit tricky, but he was intelligent, so they were all prepared to listen. Where's he gone? They said. What's happened to him? And Crow had a big think, and he picked up a spear and he threw it in the river. He's gone, he said. Yes, we heard that one before. Ah, But you see, if you watch the spear, it disappears down. But then it comes up again. That's like Cockatoo. He will come back in a different form. Really, they all said. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, said the crow. I believe that's what will happen. That's what will happen to us all. So they all looked around at the other animals and said, well, if Cockatoo's going to come back, we ought to wrap him up carefully and keep him warm, which they did. And then they looked at the other animals. Who else is going to try this out? Who else is going to try and go away and come back? Well, they all looked at each other. You know, as you do, nobody wants to go first. And then forward came the slithering snake. I will have a try, he hissed. I will go away and come back. I will go too, said the possum with the great big eyes, who only came out at night, the possum who ate fruit all the time. So that was good, they said. You can go away and come back. When will you come back? And the two animals thought, and they said, we will come back in the spring. And then you will see that we are different. So the snake slithered down into a hole and went to sleep. And the possum climbed the tree and hid inside the tree and went to sleep. Now we call that not sleeping, but hibernating. Because they sort of go into a sleep that lasts not overnight, not over 2 nights, but over months. And they have to be well fed to last that long. So the animals went about their business and they went away. They came back in the spring. And they came back and they looked at the space and thought, well, where are they? And they waited 1 whole day before back came Snake and Possum. But when Snake came back, he didn't look different. He just looked very thin. He hadn't eaten for 3 months and his skin was all falling off. Possum, well, when Possum came down from the trees, he looked even worse. His fur was all dirty and he looked so hungry. So the animals looked at each other and said, we don't believe it. They didn't go away and come back differently. Crow was joking. But then the insect said, we want to try, give us a try. But the animals looked round and said, insects? Who's ever heard of an intelligent fly? The insects, ha, they won't be able to do it. But the insects insisted. You've heard of when a butterfly stamps its foot and it goes round the world. Well, the insects stamped their feet very hard and very long. And so all the other animals listened. Now, said the insects, you will have to take care of us first. Some will need to be wrapped in stones and bark and placed in the river. And some will need to be wrapped up in silk and placed underground. And some will need to be wrapped up in silk and put in the trees. And then we will come back in spring and we will be different. Okay, said the animals, we will do that. So they took the first little round squidgy thing. It looked like a maggot, really. And they wrapped it up in bark and stones and they placed it in the river. Now the next one, well, this looked more slug-like. And they wrapped it up and they put it deep underground. And the third one was a caterpillar. And they wrapped it up in silk. And they hung it in a tree, up high, higher than you could reach. And then everybody went away for the winter. because it's hard work in the winter. You've got to keep eating. And spring was coming round the corner. And spring was a happy time because everybody knew you could eat again. And so they all gathered for a spring party. They brought food and they brought flowers with them because the first flowers were opening. And they all sat on a great big picnic rug and they waited. Those insects, they're useless. They're not coming. Who said we should trust an insect? Insects, ha! They're just itchy things, bouncy things, scratchy things. But then there was a noise, a little hum and a buzz. And up towards all the animals came a flight of beautiful butterflies, a flight of dragonflies with their long bodies and their iridescent wings, and caddisfly. Those are the things that you put under the water, the caddisfly larvae. And up they came with their beautiful spotted wings. And all around there was a buzzing and a humming and a flitting of these beautiful, beautiful creatures. And the animals looked from one to the other and they said, they have changed. They are now beautiful. Do you remember what they looked like before, like slugs? Now look, they are colourful, they are joyful. What they have brought into the world. And the insects, they have changed. And that is the story of how the animals learnt that some things go away and change and come back totally, totally different. And that is my story. Thank you very much. So, there were the butterflies, but now we need a smuggler because it's time for smugglers. And this is a lady smuggler and she's from near Ipswich. And it's a true story, which is really nice, isn't it? So Ipswich is sort of out the end of London, all the way around the coast and up. If you're going right from here. Oh, somebody sounds like their tummy's rumbling. I'm not quite sure whose tummy is rumbling. That's a very interesting noise. Anyway.
Ipswich for nearly 30 years. I lived in Ipswich for 30 years.
There you go then. So have you heard of the smuggler Betty Catchpole?
Ah, yes.
There are two catchpoles. One was a smuggler, yes, and the other one was involved but not directly. So this is the smuggler lady. Okay. There was a ship and it was called the Sally. And the Sally sailed from Ipswich across to France to get the treasure. And the treasure of that time that everybody wanted was tobacco. Yes. And it was wine and rum and brandy in big, big barrels. Because here, the taxman, being as we all love a taxman, the taxman put taxes on everything. So wine and brandy and rum were very expensive. But if you went to France and put it on your boat and came back home and slipped it up the coast, you didn't pay any taxes. But as always, there is always somebody following. And if there is a smuggler, there's an excise man out to catch them. Well, the Sally had been quite successful going backwards and forwards, and it was captained by Captain Catchpole. But one day they were chased, and he was trying to get the barrels hidden when there was an accident. The boom came round, one of the big sails, and hit him on the head, and he rolled over and over and over and over with the barrel and fell into the sea. And unlike some people I know who go to swimming lessons because it's very important, I wonder who goes to swimming lessons. Does anybody I know? It's to swimming lessons. You see, Louis would have been able to swim away and save himself because he's gone to swimming lessons. But the captain of the Sally, he couldn't swim like many sailors and he drowned. Which means that we all should go to swimming lessons. So the news was brought back to his wife. And poor Bessie, she sat there and thought, what am I going to do? I've got a ship with all the crew and all the families who depend on me. What am I going to do? And she did what any woman would have done. She marched upstairs. She opened her husband's chest. She found the smallest pair of trousers, because I must admit he had got a bit big in the tummy recently. She found the smallest pair of trousers and she put them on. And she found a big belt and tightened it up. Then she got his old sword and she put his sword down her side. Then she found his pipe and she gripped it firmly between her teeth. And finally, she got a hat and she rolled her hair up into the hat. And there she was changed. She was dressed as a man, which was, in fact, almost practically illegal. You know, in America, it was very illegal to dress as a man in some places. So all those Puritans, you know, they had strange rules. Equally here, it was not seen as a good thing. But she felt safe, Bessie did, in her outfit, and she strode down 1, 2, 3, 4, down to the harbour wall, singing to herself. Oh, I'm singing as I go. Oh, I'm gonna get aboard. And she marched up the drawbridge and she stood there on deck and she looked amazing. She had on a good hat, a good shirt, the pair of trousers and the sword and the pipe. But there was silence on board. The crew all looked at her. They looked at her. It was a her. But then the first mate realised this was his saving. They might be sailing again and earning. So he turned and he shouted, "Salute the captain!" And the sailors saluted, except one. They all looked at him. They thought he hadn't heard. So the first mate said it again. "Salute the captain!" He didn't do it the second time. He knew no salute was forthcoming. So Bessie, she gripped that pipe even harder in her teeth. She clenched her fist. And she walked over to the man who did not salute. She pulled back her fist and gave him a punch right on his chin. Boing! And so surprised was he that he fell straight backwards onto the floor. Boing, 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 boing. And at that point, the rest of the ship, they cheered. Hooray! Salute the captain! And everyone this time, even the poor man on the ground, saluted, for they knew she had imposed her will on the ship. And she would be a good captain. Oh, and she was. You see, she wasn't the best of sailors, but she was the best at planning and organising. She knew the better times of the day to go and come back. And soon they were racing back from France with everything, their treasure on board, zipping in and out, hiding in places, and being chased by the excise men on their boats. Well, she got away with it a few times, and then one morning, the boats were following quickly behind, and she didn't know what to do. And suddenly she had a plan. She got a net and threw everything in it, all the barrels, and weighed it down with an anchor, threw it overboard. And then she told the mate in the kitchen, "Cook up breakfast," she said, "and we will wait for the excisemen." Now, meanwhile, Bessie, she changed. She took off her men's shirt, her men's trousers and the sword, and she put on a fine silk dress. And she sat there waiting for her breakfast with a fine cup of tea. And as the excisemen climbed aboard, she said, "Would you like a cup of tea before your breakfast?" They were not having breakfast. They looked at her and they said, "You are a smuggler, woman. We don't want any of this breakfast malarkey. We are going to search your ship from top to bottom. And if we find anything, it'll be the worse for you." So off she went, drinking her cup of tea, looking round as if she was helping them, following them everywhere they went in her long skirts, swishing them. "You're looking for something," she kept saying, and helping them, but really, she was getting in the way. The skirts were getting in the way. The cup of tea was getting in the way. The smell of bacon and eggs cooking was turning the stomachs of the poor Navy excisemen. But they found nothing. Yay! They didn't believe it. But what could they do? There was no proof she'd been smuggling. There was nothing there. They weren't happy. They looked her square in the face and they said, "We know you're cheating, young lady. We will be back." But they had to leave. And as soon as they'd left, oh, of course, Bessie changed back, put her trousers back on, her big thick belt, her nice shirt. She tucked her hair back up in her hat and she put on the sword. And they sailed back to where the net had been dropped with the barrels, and they rolled them back up on board. She was a clever lady. It is said that once she was chased by a very big ship, and she knew she couldn't get away. So she told them to raise the yellow flag. You know the yellow flag? The yellow flag, well, it's the plague, the pestilence. So they raised the yellow flag and then they turned around and sailed straight for the Navy ship. And there they were on board looking at the yellow flag going, "The plague is coming, the plague is coming." And as we all know, we are very not happy with the plague, are we? Having all just had COVID and got away with it, and then having it all again. Loads of people are having it again here in the UK. We're not happy with plagues. So that Navy ship, it did not stop to collect her. It just turned and ran. The sailors, they loved her. She was a fair captain. She looked after them and she made sure they rested on a Sunday. Because you shouldn't work 7 days a week, should you? 1 day off. They said also she was pretty nifty sometimes at disguise. They carried at least 2 sets of sails. Now, the Sally was supposed to have big white sails, but sometimes she put up big dark brown sails. And when you see a ship through your long spyglass, all you really see is the sails. So if you see a white set of sails, it's the Sally. If you see a brown set of sails, it's not the Sally, so you'd go away. Well, Bessie, she outwitted the excisemen for 2 whole years, never getting caught, rushing backwards and forwards and making enough money to survive. But they say then she gave up. I think she probably bought one of those great big inns, you know, big hotels. And I have heard the story that anyone in the know used to go to her big inn and they would creep up behind her and say, "Salute the captain." And she would smile, remembering how she was captain of the Sally and a smuggler brave. Thank you.
That
Okay.
was a fitting ending.
That might well have been the ostrich at Worcester,
Ah,
on account of the fact that was a smuggler's pub.
yeah.
But that might not have been on the other hand.
Yeah, I have to go and have an investigate, because she seems like quite a neat character. So I like the fact that she put on the trousers when it wasn't. I don't know if it's illegal in the 17th century, but I know it was in America, because when you dial it up, when you look on the Wikipedia of life, it says it's totally illegal in some states in America to wear men's clothes as a
And
woman.
vice versa.
Well, yes. We always think that only women get caught on these things. Yeah, they had to change when we started riding bicycles. That was when it changed.
Excellent story. I usually don't care for pirate stories, but yours?
That's because it's Bessie, and she has a hat and a sword and a good pair of trousers. We all need a good pair of trousers. Anyway, we will move on, and we will go back to my butterflies. I don't know why. I think it's butterfly weather. No, I know what it is. See, I have a lovely sister. I have two sisters, but one has just changed jobs, and now she's working for the Butterfly Trust. So I keep finding butterfly stories to annoy her. So she's conserving butterflies in the universe, and this is a lovely butterfly story. There was once two friends on a summer's day, two girls out walking in the countryside. And like earlier this week, it was quite hot. And they'd walked over the fields and they sat in the shade under a tree, a big tree where the apples were growing. They were now hard, but soon they would ripen. And as it was so lovely and warm, they both drifted off. But one of the girls snored. Now, I would not normally say that ladies snored, but as they're girls, they can snore, I think. And one of them did the biggest snore ever and woke her friend, and she was quite startled. But then she looked at her friend next to her who was sleeping, and she smiled. But then a strange thing happened. Her friend's mouth opened and out flew a little butterfly, a white butterfly with little orange tips on its wings, called an orange tip butterfly. And it flew up into the sky. And there was something about it that was so beautiful that the girl got up to follow it, leaving her friend asleep. And she followed as the butterfly flew up and down to beside a little stream. And there were some stepping stones, and the butterfly seemed to dance across the stepping stones to the other side, hopping from one to the next to the next. And then when it got to the other side, it flew up again, over the bulrushes, over the other side of the stream to an open field. And it circled round and round and round, as they do, flitting and dancing above the girl's head. Then she watched it as it seemed to spiral down, and on the ground there was a skull. It was a horse's skull, oh, very old. So old it was white and shiny, with big eye sockets and a long, long nose, sitting there in the grass with twitches of grass coming out the end. And the butterfly landed on one of those twitches of grass. And then it disappeared into the skull. and around and around and around it went. And the girl tried to find it. She was looking really hard, but she couldn't see. And after a while, she turned away, thinking that the butterfly was lost, when suddenly it darted out of the nostril. Out it came, up, twirling and whirling around, and back over the bulrushes. Those are the big long rushes with brown tops. And when they flower, they open out, and there are hundreds and hundreds of little seeds come flying out. But when they're brown, they look like brown velvet, almost like a chocolate lollipop, I would say. And over flew the butterfly and back down to the stream. And again, it seemed to hop, hop, hop across those stepping stones and back up to where the friend was still sleeping. And as the butterfly got to the girl opened her mouth and the butterfly went back inside. And the friend ran up to her, worried. What happens when you swallow a butterfly? Apart from the butterfly doesn't have a good life. But the girl sat up suddenly and coughed. No butterfly appeared anywhere. But she looked at her friend and said, I have had the most amazing dream. I saw that I could reach and fly. It was incredible. I went up so high, up in the sky. And I looked down and I came to this beach. It was so wide and long. And in the bay, I could see an island. And suddenly I could fly again, and I flew to the first island. And then I could see another island, so I flew to that. And then there was a third island, and I flew. And then I seemed to go over a mountain and some really tall, brown, spiky trees. And up I went. And then I saw this building so big and white and shiny. And I went down and the doors were open. And I went in the doors and it was like marble, white, shiny marble everywhere. And soon I got lost. The walls were shining, the floor was shining, and there was nobody there. It echoed. Even my feet seemed to ping on the floor and tap, tap, tap. And I didn't think I would ever get out. You know those nightmares when you can't get out of the building. But suddenly I saw another door opening in front of me, and out I went. And this time I jumped into the sky because I knew I could fly now. And I flew up over those trees again. And there I saw the islands. And I flew from one island back across to the beach. And then I twisted and turned. And then you woke me up. One girl looked at the other girl. And the girl who'd watched the butterfly told her friend all about watching the butterfly come out of her mouth. But she didn't quite believe it now. Perhaps she'd seen a butterfly next to the girl. She didn't know. But wasn't it incredible that both of them had had this magical dream about the butterfly in the heat of summer by a stream under a tree with apples on in the countryside in England? And that's the end of my story about the butterfly. And I think we've got time just for the frog. Have we got time for the frog? Oh, definitely we've got frog time. We have to finish with the frog. I don't know how we have to finish with the frog, but we do have to finish with the frog. Because I told this story yesterday when I went on a literacy picnic yesterday. And I told the story yesterday, so I thought I would tell it again today. And it links again with the heat of the summer and the water. There was a spring, a little spring of water coming out of the ground. And there were lots of bubbles as the water reached out into the sky. And the bubbles seemed to jump and jump and jump. And if you'd been there watching, you would have seen one of the bubbles looked more green than the others. A bit like a tadpole, perhaps. And it jumped up and up and up, and spray went around. And every day, the lyrebird would walk up to the spring to drink. Now, the lyrebird was very tall and elegant, with a long, long tail that it flicked. And the lyrebird was renowned for its beautiful voice, for it could sing like an opera singer sings. It is the opera singers of all birds. And every day the lyrebird would come and drink of the spring water, for he said, "I can sing because I drink of the spring water." But one day when he came, he could see the bubbles. And he could see that green bubble, and he watched it go up and down and up and down and up and down until it popped. And surprise, surprise, there was a little frog sitting on the ground. The lyrebird wasn't sure whether it was magic or he'd just seen the bubble burst and the little frog appear, because the frog was the tiniest little he had ever seen. And he peered right the way down to the frog, for lyrebird to the little frog was like a giant. And the face and the long beak and the eyes of the lyrebird looked at the tiny little frog and said, "Do you speak?" And the frog opened its mouth and nothing came out. No sound. "This will never do," said the lyrebird. And he suddenly thought, "I will teach the frog to sing. What a brilliant idea." "I will teach you to sing," said the lyrebird. "You be here every day when I come to drink, and I will teach you to sing." Well, it took a long time, because as we know, frogs do not sing very well. They sing in a strange tone. But the lyrebird was persistent and hard-working, and every day he was there, making the little frog practice, and he was a tiny little frog. But the frog got better and better and better, and now, when the lyrebird wasn't there, he practiced. And he practiced throwing his voice, so it came from different places. And suddenly he could make little bits of song. And one day he was practicing on his own when the lyrebird came back. The lyrebird heard him. "Oh, you can sing! Tomorrow we will have a concert." And that was what was happening. The next day, the lyrebird brought all its friends. And they all stood round, and the lyrebird sang, and then the little frog sang. And everybody applauded. They thought it was magnificent, the beautiful lyrebird with its elegance and long, long tail, and the little frog, all green and tiny, singing together. Except that it had made the frog's head rather bigger than it should have been. It made him quite pompous in some ways. And when a little red frog came along the next day, the green frog said, "You know, I have an amazing singing voice. I've got this wonderful singing voice. I can sing beautifully. I can sing better than the lyrebird." "Oh, really?" said the little red frog. "Okay. Can you sing so well you can get that beautiful moon to come down and listen to you?" Oh, yes, of course, said the little green frog. I can get the big moon to come down and listen to me. So the frog started singing. And at first it was beautiful, and it trilled and it ran through all its notes and all the songs that the lyrebird had taught him. But did the moon move? The moon did not move. The moon never moved. The moon did not come down. And the little red frog sat there and said, can't see the moon coming down. The moon hasn't moved yet. Don't think you're doing very well. The moon hasn't come down to see you. Better sing louder, I think. So the poor little green frog, that pompous little green frog, sang louder and harder until its throat was so sore that it was now coughing and spluttering. And by the morning, when the little red frog turned and said, and how is your voice now? All the little green frog could do was croak, grabber, grabber. Which is why, to this day, frogs do not sing like lyrebirds. They croak like frogs who have sung all night to the moon. And the moon has not come down to visit them. And that is the story of the pompous green frog. Thank you very much. Woo!
And thank you, Sarah. What a magnificent set. We've had pirates, we've had butterflies, we've been to my hometown, Ipswich, and for the marvelous, is it Bessie? Bessie Catchpole or Betty? Bessie.
Bessie, and I think I might have said Betty, but I must say Bessie because she is a Bessie.
It's a Bessie. Bessie is much more of the period.
Wow.
Yes, Bessie Catchpole. We've had butterflies. Been fantastic. And what have we got coming up? I'll tell you what we've got coming up. On Sunday, we have the Worldwide Story Round, hosted by none other than Mike Rust. And that's at 7 o'clock in the evening on Sunday. And on Tuesday, we, of course, have our magnificent international young storytellers at 5 o'clock in the evening. And sometimes Louis comes on and tells the story on that.
Whoa,
And
Louis,
he has been fantastic. And then next Friday, we are coming live from Cambridge Folk Festival. And there will be a gaggle of storytellers.
Whoa.
And so we're assuming that everything works technologically. I haven't allowed for failure there. But it's in Cambridge. It's much easier than doing it from a festival in the middle of the countryside. So
there might be bandwidth, you mean, in Cambridge?
Yes. And this is an advance warning. And Bubba C, I'm going to grab you for one of these, but don't worry about it yet. On Folk East, we are broadcasting into Folk East. And when on Friday nights, we're going to have a group of storytellers from around the world doing stories for children. And that's not for a few weeks, but this is an advance warning, which is on August 19th, 20th, and 21st. And on Saturday, we're going to have a special International Young Tellers 5 o'clock in the evening from around the world. And on Sunday, we'll have a special Worldwide Story Round, but hosted by me, because I have to be in control of everything. I mean, no, it's not. It's not for control freak purposes. It's because I'm trying to balance everything at the festival, and we're live in the middle of a festival, and I want to link up with the cafe in Marrakesh, and all sorts of complications and potential for disaster, but magnificent times simultaneously. So,
hey, John Rowe,
yeah.
Could we say that today we have been serenaded? Relative Sarah stories.
Well, yes, we can have in fact been serenaded.
Uh,
It's if you put on, it works, but you try just give me a say that with a southern drawl, Baba C. Go for it.
Well, I do believe that we have been serenaded by the wonderful Sarah Lloyd Winder, and I can't wait to hear her stories in the future. Of course, after Baba C's August 5th birthday celebration of Stories for Children, I had to sneak that one in.
In case you didn't notice, Baba C is on at Friday, August the 5th. After the wonderful Cambridge Folk Festival Live. Now, I've totally confused you. So, in fact, just go to our website and see and just see the schedule.
I'll be totally confused again. Yes, yeah.
And if anyone is actually on the website and listening on the website, you'll see a little hat. And should you drop a penny or two into the hat, because Sarah hasn't eaten for 3 weeks, and she definitely needs some gig money. So drop her a bit into the hat. But meanwhile, a round of applause for Sarah Lloyd Winder.
Don't be a hater, be a hatter.
Hey, hey.
Hey.
The Hatters, they come from Luton, up the road.
Right. So, Ali, thank you very much for hosting tonight and driving the magic carpet. Meanwhile, farewell to all of you till Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Louis.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, John.
Bye,
Thank
Baba.
you, Ali. Thank you, Baba
Bye,
C.
bye, Baba
Oh, yeah, the
C.
5th of August. I remember the 5th of August for something. What was happening on the 5th?
I'm having a
Baba
5th
C.
after I tell stories for children.
That's
I'm going to leave. Right. I mean, not a leave on August 5th, but right now. So,
okay.
very
Bye.
well, everyone.
Bye.
Later, Louis. Love you much.
Neighbors.
Thank you, Ali.
Bye.